warm welcome to the Tabletop Games blog topic discussion.
Demo versus teach. Different types of presenting games. Fresh off the back of demoing games for Asmodee at UK Games Expo 2023, I wanted to share my experiences with introducing people to a new game. I think demoing and teaching games are two similar, but also different approaches. In this article, I want to look at them more closely. First of all, let me explain what I mean by demoing and teaching. Both are about allowing someone to be able to play a game with no or only very little help. However, while teaching is about giving people as complete an understanding of the game as possible, including all or at least the large majority of rules, demoing is much more focused on allowing someone to experience how a game feels without necessarily learning all of the rules. After you teach someone a game, they will be able to play it themselves, at least on the whole. They might need some rules refreshers, but in principle, they know the game now. When you demo a game, you have no expectation that people will be able to play it by themselves. They will still need to pick up the rulebook and check additional rules and read up on how to set up the game. I hope this gives you an idea as to what I mean by the terms demoing and teaching. So let's start with what demoing and teaching have in common. When you show someone a game that's new to them, you always have to consider how much they know about modern hobby games, and then what sort of games they already know. If someone is very familiar with a lot of different games, they will find it a lot easier to learn a new one. There will be mechanisms and other concepts that they already know. If someone is very new to the hobby, then your approach will have to change. You have to think about what terminology will need additional explanations. Whether you demo or teach a game, you will probably outline what the game is about and how it works, then explain some of the rules. I also think you should try and get people to play as soon as possible and only go over what's necessary. Some people don't like that, at least not during a teach, but I often find people forget rules anyway. So you might as well start playing, then explain the rest as you get to it. When it comes to setting up a game, in a demo you probably have most things ready, or at least mostly set up. That is also often true when it comes to teaching a game. Yet in both cases, there are games where it makes sense to get everyone involved in setting up the game. That way, people can familiarize themselves with the components. It's also an opportunity to tell everyone what different things are called. After all, there will be some sort of in-game terminology. Different card decks will have different functions and have different names in the game, for example. So far, so good. Demoing and teaching are clearly quite similar in a number of ways. Now it's time to look at how they differ. I think the key here is the expected outcome. As I said, a demo isn't about explaining a game fully. You just want people to get a flavor of what a game is like. Chances are you're only going to play a few rounds. You're unlikely to play a complete game. So there's no need to go over all of the rules. People need to know just enough so they can start playing. You probably still want to talk about how the game ends and how scoring works in broad strokes, but there's no need to go into detail. When you do a full teach, on the other hand, you do want to have explained all of the rules, the endgame triggers, scoring, and everything else. Depending on your approach, you might not talk about everything at the start, but by the end of the game, you should have covered pretty much the whole rulebook. I think the setup is also different in demos as opposed to when teaching a game to friends or family. In a demo situation, you often skip some setup steps. Instead of shuffling decks, you might order the cards in a specific way to create a scenario that gives players a good feeling about how the game works. It's about the experience people around the table have during the demo. You want them to go away and buy the game. You don't expect them to know it fully. Mind you, when you teach a game to friends and family, you might also skip some setup steps. For example, asking people to draft cards during a first play can be a bit frustrating. Nobody will know all of the symbols or have any idea of how valuable certain cards are over others. It's sometimes easier to just randomly deal out cards, but explain that in future plays cards would be properly drafted. Demos and teachers can also differ when it comes to taking turns. In a demo, you might get players to do specific things to start with. That helps you explain certain actions or mechanisms, and also takes away the pressure from people to make decisions they don't fully understand yet. After a certain number of rounds, players can then make their own choices, because they can now see what effect actions have. It's unlikely you do this during a normal teach, but you might still suggest what someone might want to do on their turn. However, you don't want to take away people's agency. That's a really fine balancing act that's especially hard in a demo. You want everyone to feel that they make their own decisions at least for most of the time they play the demo. At the same time, you want to steer them in a certain direction, for example by setting up the game in a specific way, so that they have a good experience overall. I'm sure there are more differences and similarities between demos and normal teachers, but I think I covered the main ones. So my question is, have you ever demoed a game? What are your tips? Do you approach a demo in the same way as when you teach a game to friends or family? As always, please share thoughts and experiences on the blog at tabletopgamesblog.com. I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you for listening to this Tabletop Games Blog Topic Discussion podcast. Please check the description below for links mentioned in this episode, as well as to the written version of this article on the blog. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, give us some stars or leave a review. Please also tell your friends about me, and if you want to offer financial support, check out my Patreon and Ko-fi pages, links to which you'll find in the blog at tabletopgamesblog.com. So thank you again for listening, and I hope to see you again soon.
This podcast was made possible by the generous help of my supporters. Royal Patron Sean Newman, Magic Champion John Risley, Castle Guards David Miller and James Naylor, Dice Masters Alex Bardi, Paul Grogan and Robin Kay, and Shining Lights Jacob Davis, Gavin Jones, Sarah Reed and Richard Simpson.